Thank you all for listening and watching my videos. Please subscribe and like my channel Master Coolitz. Hoping that you will not skip my ads, it's a big help for me by not skipping it. Thank you so much. Dragon Shadow. The Rise.
In the shadowy alley of the strange little world, danger loomed. The air was thick with the scent of impending violence, and the darkened alley seemed to close in around them, amplifying the tension. Zane Martel stood firm, his eyes blazing with defiance and determination. His stance was unwavering, a beacon of resolve amidst the chaos. Before him, members of the notorious Giant Devil sect sneered, their intentions clear. They moved with a predatory grace, their eyes filled with malicious glee at the thought of an easy conquest.
Brat, if you don't want to die, hand over the Holy Lotus lamp and get lost, otherwise die now.
His voice was a harsh whisper dripping with venomous intent as he stepped closer, his shadow looming ominously over Zane. The faces of the two approaching figures darkened, their expressions hardening into masks of cruelty. A sinister tension filled the air, crackling with the unspoken promise of violence. Every eye in the alley was on Zane, waiting to see how he would respond to the deadly threat.
Die? I'm not the one who's going to die. I'm afraid it's you guys. Take off all your storage rings. If I'm not happy, I will wash this city with your blood.
His voice was ice cold, cutting through the night like a blade. His gaze was unwavering, a silent challenge to the gathered enemies. The crowd froze, stunned by Zane Martel's audacity. Even the fat man with ill intentions, who had been leering at the women, paused, eyes wide in disbelief. A murmur of shock rippled through the onlookers, their faces a mix of fear and awe.
Is this person crazy? How dare he talk to the Giant Devil sect like this?
The whisper was barely audible, yet it carried the weight of collective astonishment. The power of the Giant Devil sect was legendary, their numbers formidable, and their cruelty unmatched. Yet here stood Zane Martel, alone and undeterred, a solitary figure of defiance against the looming darkness. Ava and Lily Anderson, two women he had saved, looked at him with shock and worry. Their eyes were wide with fear, their breaths coming in quick, shallow gasps.
Zane, thank you for saving us last night, but you should escape now. Leave us here. We won't become their playthings.
Her voice trembled with a mixture of gratitude and desperation. She clutched her sister's hand tightly, her knuckles white with the strength of her grip. Desperation laced her voice as she gripped her sister's hand, determined to fight to the bitter end if necessary. The sisters' faces were pale, their expressions a mix of determination and fear. They knew the fate that awaited them if they fell into the hands of the Giant Devil sect.
Brat, which area are you from?
Zora Mountains.
His voice rang out clearly, a statement of identity and defiance. He stood tall, his posture radiating confidence and strength. Laughter erupted from the sect members, a cruel and mocking sound that echoed off the alley walls. They could not believe the audacity of this lone figure challenging their might.
Ha 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 ha, the Zora Mountains? Just a mere disciple from there, get him.
His voice was filled with scorn, as if the very idea of someone from the Zora Mountains posing a threat was laughable. In a flash, a man at the third stage of the expert level lunged at Zane Martel with a long spear, the air crackling with murderous intent.
Go to hell.
You better take a good look at who is going to hell first.
With a swift, precise movement, Zane Martel wielded his sky-killing sword. The sword's light sliced through the air, severing the spear and piercing the attacker's throat. The man collapsed, a pool of blood forming around him. Dead silence. The crowd stared in disbelief. How could Zane Martel kill a member of the Giant Devil sect so easily? The air seemed to thicken, the tension almost tangible as the reality of Zane's power sank in. Whispers of astonishment and fear rippled through the crowd, their collective gaze fixated on the lone warrior who dared to defy the infamous sect.
How dare you! Attack together and kill him!
His voice echoed through the alley, a command filled with fury and desperation. The remaining sect members hesitated for a fraction of a second, their confidence shaken by the swift death of their comrade. A thick, oppressive devil energy surged as the remaining sect members unleashed their fury. Dark, swirling clouds of malevolent energy converged around them, creating an almost suffocating atmosphere. Ava and Lily Anderson screamed in fear, their voices a stark contrast to the roars of rage from the sect members.
Zane, be careful!
Her voice broke through the chaos, filled with panic and helplessness. She clutched her sister tighter, her heart pounding in her chest. Zane Martell remained calm, his hands forming a quick incantation. A green light emanated from his palms, illuminating his determined face. His eyes narrowed with focus, his entire being radiating an unyielding strength.
Human Emperor's palm.
The words were spoken with authority, resonating with an ancient power that seemed to vibrate through the very air. A massive cyan palm print erupted, sweeping away the sect's attacks with lightning speed. The 7 geniuses were engulfed, their screams filling the air as the immense force crushed their defenses. The energy was overwhelming, a testament to Zane's extraordinary capabilities.
Stop him!
His voice was shrill, edged with fear, as he realized the futility of their efforts. But it was too late. The leader's body exploded into a bloody mist, the visceral sight sending shockwaves through the remaining members. The others fell, coughing up blood, their bodies broken and battered by the sheer force of the attack.
How is this possible?
Her voice was barely more than a whisper, filled with awe and disbelief. She looked at Zane as if seeing him for the first time, her mind struggling to comprehend his true strength. Even the woman nearly defiled stood in shock, her eyes wide. Zane Martell's strength was beyond their wildest dreams. The remaining sect members, faces pale with fear, tried to retreat, their confidence shattered.
Damn it, let's go. Our sect will avenge us. Boy, remember this.
His voice wavered, betraying his fear as he stumbled backward, desperate to escape the wrath of the unstoppable warrior before him. Zane Martell's gaze was icy, his demeanor unyielding as he faced the cowering enemies.
Run? Who said I would let you leave?
His words were a death sentence, cold and absolute. With a swift strike of sword energy, a fleeing man's head flew, thudding to the ground. The remaining disciples stood frozen, trapped by Zane Martell's overwhelming power. A disciple slowly walked out and said cautiously, "What did he say?" In the dim light of the eerie forest, tension crackled in the air. A disciple slowly walked out and said cautiously,
"Hey man, let us go. We don't want the Holy Lotus lamps anymore. We can pretend nothing happened, and we won't mention it to anyone."
His voice carried a chilling confidence, yet desperation laced his words. His breath was ragged, and a bead of sweat trickled down his temple, glinting in the dim torchlight. The disciples exchanged nervous glances, their fear palpable in the heavy air.
"But if you insist on your own way, even if you kill us, the giant devil sect will hunt you down. You'll never escape the strange little world."
The name Giant Devil Sect sent shivers down the spines of many. It was a name spoken in hushed whispers, synonymous with ruthless vengeance and unrelenting pursuit. They were a force not to be trifled with. Zane Martell's gaze flickered with a hint of hesitation, just enough to give the disciples a glimmer of hope. His eyes narrowed, considering their words, but his stance remained unyielding.
Yes, let us go. Otherwise, you will be hunted by the 10-sided devil hunting order.
The Anderson sisters exchanged anxious glances, their brows furrowed deeply. The fear in their eyes mirrored the gravity of the situation, their hearts pounding in their chests. The forest seemed to close in on them, the trees standing as silent witnesses to the unfolding drama.
Zane.
Zane's expression hardened. He had heard the terrifying tales of the 10-sided devil hunting order, 10 of the giant devil sect's most formidable warriors targeting their prey until death. The stories were etched in his memory, each one more horrifying than the last. His mind raced through the implications, but his face betrayed no fear.
The devil hunting order.
Sensing Zane's wavering, the disciples pounced on the opportunity. Their hope reignited. They pressed their advantage, their voices rising with a mix of desperation and relief.
Yes, let us go and we'll forget this ever happened.
The forest seemed to hold its breath. Zane Martell's sigh broke the silence, a sound of resignation and calculated decision. His grip on the sky sword relaxed slightly, the tension in his shoulders easing.
They deserve to die. They shouldn't have been so dirty-minded.
With a final sigh, Zane lowered his sword. The blade gleamed ominously in the torchlight, reflecting the haunted expressions of the disciples. Relief washed over their faces, a mixture of disbelief and joy.
In that case, you may leave.
Disbelief turned to joy on the disciples' faces as they quickly took to the sky. Their feet barely touched the ground before they were airborne, the promise of escape driving their hurried movements. But the triumph was short-lived. Zane's eyes flashed with deadly resolve, a fierce determination settling over him.
Human Emperor's palm.
A massive handprint shot out, catching the fleeing disciples. The air rippled with the force of the attack, the ground trembling beneath its power. Their screams echoed through the forest as their bodies exploded, lifeless. The silence that followed was deafening, a stark contrast to the violent end that had just unfolded. The forest, once a stage for desperation and deceit, now stood as a silent testament to Zane Martel's unyielding resolve and the inescapable wrath of the human emperor's palm.
Naive fools. Did you really think I'd believe your nonsense?
Zane's cold words cut through the air like a knife, chilling the hearts of the onlookers. As he bent down, his fingers deftly slipped the storage rings off the lifeless fingers of the disciples. With each ring he gathered, a surge of blood energy flowed into him, the vitality of the fallen seeping into his own being, revitalizing and strengthening him. His expression remained impassive, betraying no hint of the power he felt coursing through his veins.
What about them?
Ava pointed to a terrified woman and her dying partner who cowered in fear, their eyes wide with horror. The woman clutched her partner's hand, their bodies trembling uncontrollably. Every breath they took was a desperate gasp, the reality of their situation sinking in with every passing second.
Leave them. This world is dangerous, and they rely on betraying others to survive.
His voice was indifferent, carrying the weight of harsh truths. Suddenly, the 8 corpses began to glow with an eerie blood-red light. The illumination grew brighter, more intense, as the bodies seemed to convulse. The light converged, forming a singular dazzling scarlet token that shot directly into Zane's body. A chilling sensation enveloped him, as if icy fingers had gripped his very soul.
Is this the 10-sided devil hunting order?
Zane's voice wavered, momentarily betraying his surprise. The Anderson sisters, standing nearby, watched in horror and guilt.
Zane, what should we do? It's our fault.
Lily's voice quivered with guilt, her eyes welling up with unshed tears. The responsibility weighed heavily on them, knowing that Zane could have avoided this fate had it not been for their involvement.
It's not your fault. If the giant devil sect dares to come, they'll regret it.
His words were resolute, filled with a determined ferocity. Unperturbed by the ominous token now embedded within him, Zane led the way into Fog City, the Anderson sisters trailing behind. The city, shrouded in mist, appeared ancient and worn, its buildings barely standing. The fog hung thick, muffling sounds, and creating an eerie silence that was occasionally broken by distant, indistinct noises.
If you're tired, find a place to rest. I'll look around.
The Anderson sisters nodded, their faces etched with exhaustion and relief. They found a more secluded house, the old wooden door creaking as they pushed it open. Inside, the dim light revealed a modest space, sparse yet offering a sense of security. They settled in, the weight of the day's events pressing down on them, and rested for the time being. Zane Martel, on the other hand, walked purposefully to a desolate place where no one was present. The air was thick with silence, the ground uneven and overgrown with wild vegetation. He glanced around once more, ensuring his solitude, and then quietly entered the Dragon Prison. The ancient structure was a hidden sanctuary, its walls echoing with the faint hum of contained power. In the Dragon Prison, Zane took out the storage rings he had obtained from the fallen disciples of the giant devil sect. His hands moved with practiced precision, carefully handling the rings as he prepared to unveil their contents. With a flick of his wrist, he poured out all the things inside. The sound of metal hitting the stone floor reverberated through the chamber. Soon, the items piled up to the size of a small mountain, a chaotic heap of treasures and artifacts. The pile of things was a mess, a haphazard collection of bottles, cans, crystals, and genuine energy artifacts.
As expected of the geniuses of the giant devil sect, they carry a lot more on them compared to the average person.
Zane's eyes lit up with excitement as he immediately began to nod his head gently. His fingers danced over the items, sorting through the treasures with practiced ease. After half a day, he paused, surveying the wealth before him.
In terms of crystals alone, each of them had at least 100 million. Even the entire Five Spirits sect might not have so many crystals.
He could not help but sigh, the sheer volume of wealth astounding him. He picked up several bottles and cans, examining the contents with keen interest. Inside were some medicinal pills, black and covered with rolling devil energy. They seemed to be elixirs specially prepared for practicing the devil way.
It's useless. I'll leave it aside first, and then find a way to sell it.
Zane muttered to himself, setting the pills aside. After another half an hour, he was finally done counting everything. There were a total of 15 bottles of pills. 2 bottles were useful for improving one's cultivation, and the rest were elixirs for cultivating the devil way. There were 7 5th-grade genuine energy artifacts and 12 4th-grade genuine energy artifacts. Both of these could sell for 1 or 2 billion. There were also all sorts of oddly shaped minerals, some of which Zane had never even seen before. His eyes gleamed with recognition as he picked up 5 jade boxes, each containing a strange spiritual herb, their surfaces glowing faintly.
2 fireball roots, 1 dazzling flower, and 2 ghost king heart-killing lotus.
Zane was overjoyed, immediately recognizing the types of spiritual herbs. If these spiritual herbs were brought out, they could be exchanged for quite a few crystals. There were also a few martial arts techniques and cultivation methods that appeared to be from the Giant Devil sect. However, they were not of much use to Zane. Soon, Zane left the dragon prison and walked to the street. The city was alive with activity, the bustling marketplace a stark contrast to the solitude he had just left. He entered a shop that was temporarily built with a lot of people, the murmur of voices and the clinking of coins filling the air. Zane's mind was already calculating, planning his next move in this dangerous game.